With Superbug, I really enjoyed the visual part of the game. First and foremost, there's great clarity within the game space where I felt that I knew exactly what was going on at all times. Thalen and Zimmerman touched on this throughout their book, and I felt that this game was both a perfect information game and an imperfect information game at the same time. What I mean by this is the player knows nearly everything, right? They can see the new bacteria form, the bacteria that can't yet be killed, they can see when the next antibiotic will come out, etc. However, what the player can't tell is where the new bacteria will form and when it will form. However, the player knows exactly what to do when they see the new bacteria. Click. Furthermore, I think the game takes sort of stereotypical colors and uses them well. Right? So the more red the bacteria gets, the more dangerous and lethal it becomes. Also, when the lethal bacteria spreads, there is a lot of glowing and shaking, both of the bacteria and the sidebar with the skull. This led to a real sense of urgency in the gameplay, where the player can no longer make any mistakes, or else they lose and die, and so does everyone else. Also, after every playthrough, there's a graph that displays how long you survive. There's like a quote, and it shows you like sort of the gameplay through the graph and through like statistics. Uh, the sonic design, the popping sound when you touch new bacteria is very helpful because oftentimes I would click and then move to the next bacteria approaching, and the popping sound would assure me that my move was carried through. As the lethal bacteria spreads, the sound becomes more fast paced and adds a real sense of like danger and urgency that I just touched on. And this sound also indicates to the player that if the bacteria continues to spread at this rate, they will lose and die very soon. The game has really two mechanics, both of which are simple touch commands. The player can clear new bacteria and then use the new antibiotic when it comes out. However, as the game and years go on in the game, and the game gets progressively harder, the player must clear bacteria faster and more often. Also, the new antibiotics take progressively longer to come out. Therefore, clearing the new bacteria is sometimes impossible, and there will always be some level of lethal bacteria in the dish. The player does not have to use the new antibiotic immediately, and and must use the new antibiotic appropriately and effectively in order to survive for a long time. And more about this is the game is both easy and hard to meet, right? So the mechanics of the game are pretty easy and straightforward. However, there is like some strategy needed in order to survive for longer. Like on most of my playthroughs, I was getting like the same years, but I was using the same strategy. I was like using the trying to use the new bacteria or the new antibiotic as quick as possible. However, as I played, I figured this was probably not the best way to go about surviving for longer. And something that actually really helped me was the game's tutorial obviously like tells you a lot about like the game. However, there's like one sentence that like it doesn't specifically say to like use the antibiotic as soon as it comes out. It doesn't explicitly say that. So I think that's like where the idea came about for me. I think that the visual, audio, and general nature of the game made it very engaging. Since the data which you are scored upon is simply how long you survive, I felt that I could always survive a little longer each time and gradually go up like a few years. However, it was harder than I first thought. The game's theme is not unfamiliar. One of the first things I related to this was actually the Ebola quote unquote crisis that happened a few years back. Ebola was like really publicized and it was in the news a lot. However, I felt like, and I still feel like, I don't really know like what it's about, and I still don't really know like how dangerous it was or like is. I know there was like an Ebola, like a person with Ebola at like Emory. There was just a lot of like hype around. Not like hype's not the right word, but there was a lot of like uh just like media about the Ebola crisis, and this reminded me of that. We also talked about in the race and ethnicity section about like the pleasure of suffering or like like the pleasure of seeing other people suffer. I don't remember the exact wording, but essentially how people derive some sort of pleasure from seeing others in pain. But it's like it's hard to look away when you see someone suffering. And there are a lot of games and recently a lot of movies that have been based on like this mass extinction or like this global like bacteria global killing. And like I think there's something fascinating about like this topic of like lethal bacteria spreading, but at its core, it's like rather cruel, right? In Superbug, we are the responsible one for the lives of every human on Earth, and it's only really a matter of time. In the game, the goal is to not die for as long as you can, but no matter what, the player will die. Like in other games, you can complete them without dying, right? However, in this, like failure is imminent, which means like you're gonna die basically. So I think that's kind of related to what we talked to before about like the suffering and of others to like a much lesser extent though. With Superbug, I really enjoyed the visual part of the game. First and foremost, there was a